Switching to sort of another topic is you've talked a lot about making sure that you're positioning procurement um, towards the fundamental business goals
Yeah.
rather than we're here to cut costs, which often doesn't really mean anything in the context of a high growth organization. How do you make sure that the procurement team is always perceived as an, you said, enabler to the business, but that its objectives are always aligned with the business? Do you have any sort of good practice, and maybe share how you communicate that to your team as well?
Yeah. You know, before I joined Ops Flyer, the company was doing great. I mean, they didn't have procurement function, but the business was thriving. The company was growing. So the natural question would be, why do they need me? Why do they need procurement? I mean, they've been doing great, really great. So why do they need me, right? So my challenge wasn't just about setting up the procurement function, as you said before, but it was about convincing my stakeholders that procurement will help them, not slow them down. And I had to show it by, that I'm not a gatekeeper. So it's not about, I'm not going to put roadblocks, but I'm going to free your time to focus on what's really important to you. If you're in marketing, you're going to focus on marketing, on creating events. If you're in R&D, you're going to focus on what you really was hired to do and not additional hats that you have to wear. Then I had to demonstrate the value through the results, right? So I had to just not just talk the talk, but also walk the walk and show them, show them the real benefits. I had to prove that they're going to get better commercial terms, faster processes, risk mitigations, and then I had their buy-in. And then, I couldn't I needed my stakeholders to understand that procurement, it's not about saying no. I had to be about, so what's yes? So what can we do? There's a lot of things that, I'm not a magician. Sometimes we're just, I don't know. I don't know. Right. So whenever I see a no, I'm like, why not? So let's see what we
How do we turn it to a yes?
yeah, how we can do that. There must be a creative way to look at it, a different angle or something that would get us to the yes, to how we can proceed that. And, and then again, clear communication. I'm a very high believer in full transparency with both our vendors and my stakeholders. And this is how, we've built that.
And it's almost like you're saying, back to what you were saying earlier around empathy and sort of putting yourself in the stakeholder shoes and trying to understand why they're doing what they're doing and why they need what they need. And maybe it's just sort of an educational or understanding level. And on that bit, I find that, you know, the business, whoever's buying whatever, and what I would call the support function, security, IT, legal, everybody wants to do great for the company, but sometimes there's no time to communicate
Yeah.
and to really align. What would you say procurement's role is in bridging this gap between those very different functions?
Yeah, I in the beginning, in the first few months, I had the sign like fire department near, near my desk because I often felt like I'm putting out fires because obviously, and I can completely understand security's needs. They have to test it. It's their job. It's in their role description. This is what they're supposed to do. And I completely understand why finance is insisting on something or a legal is super pushing on something. And then R&D is like, I need to, I have deadlines. I need to make this feature and development and the product and blah, blah, blah. And I completely understand that. So I felt like trying to orchestrate that, and trying to communicate one needs to another in their words. So you can say the same thing to every different function, but you need to use different language that will talk to them, right? So
Yeah.
it's, you need to tailor your strategy to every function, whether it's R&D, legal, marketing, and then navigate through those challenges, which is super complicated. And then on top of that, you add another layer of politics, and then it's just, and people's ego, and which is fine, and we all have it. It's not a shame to say that, but again,
It comes in all shapes and forms, the ego.
everyone, all genders, shapes, and
Agreed, agreed. Um, I really have a lot of empathy for sort of. I think a lot of what you're saying is that there's been a really deep work of changing perception, both changing perception of the procurement role, which, and you came from a big company, so like, it was sort of like this process machine, and you had to adapt to a very fast moving company, but also changing perceptions of the stakeholders.